The crystal chandeliers of the Grand Heritage Hotel should have felt magical. For me, they felt like spotlights. I smoothed the fabric of my simple black dress, hoping to blend in. It was my first big event since my life had fallen apart a year ago. I was rebuilding, piece by fragile piece. A warm hand on my shoulder made me jump. "You look beautiful, Pamela," my friend Amelia whispered. I gave her a grateful smile and took a deep breath. We found our assigned table, and my stomach dropped. There she was. My mother, Diane, was holding court, her laughter a little too loud. She glanced at me, her eyes sweeping from my hair to my shoes. A familiar, cold disappointment settled in her gaze. She turned back to her friends and said the words that shattered the evening. "She's only here because I felt sorry for her. Otherwise, she wouldn't belong in a place like this." The table went silent. I saw the event's host, Mr. Albright, overhear from a few feet away. His head tilted in confusion. He knew something they didn't. Then, he stepped toward the podium, and his eyes briefly locked with mine. My chest tightened like a vice. Whispers rippled around the table, a wave of pity and curiosity. I felt my face grow hot. It was always like this. Every school play where she said Brooke was the star, every report card where my A- was a failure, every career choice she mocked. I was the constant disappointment, Brooke was the golden child. I wanted to disappear. I pushed my chair back, ready to flee to the restroom and hide. But as I stood, Mr. Albright lifted the microphone. He saw me trying to leave and gave a subtle, firm shake of his head, signaling for me to wait. My feet felt rooted to the floor. The room's attention shifted to him. He cleared his throat, his voice warm and clear. "Before we begin tonight's program, I want to take a moment to acknowledge someone very special in this room." My heart hammered against my ribs. Mr. Albright began speaking about the event's scholarship program. He described an anonymous donor, someone who had generously funded the entire initiative this year. I froze. He was talking about me. After my consulting business finally took off, this was my first major act of giving back. I had begged him to keep my name a secret. I didn't want the attention, I just wanted to help. I saw my mother lean forward, a smug smirk on her face. She nudged the woman beside her. "That's probably Helen," she whispered, clearly assuming it was her wealthy friend. She was so sure she moved in the right circles. Mr. Albright continued, "And what makes tonight even more special is that this remarkable donor is here with us this evening." A wave of gasps swept the room. Eyes darted around, searching for the mysterious benefactor. Panic seized me. This was the exact situation I had wanted to avoid. I couldn't be revealed now, not while my mother's cruel words still hung in the air. I had to get out. I turned and tried to slip away from the table, aiming for a side exit. I barely took 2 steps before a firm hand closed around my arm. "Where do you think you're going?" my mother hissed, her grip tight. "Don't you dare embarrass me by making a scene. Sit down." Her words, usually a command I had to obey, now felt like a cage. For the first time in years, I looked her directly in the eye and pulled my arm free. I didn't say a word. I just walked away, my legs trembling. I nearly collided with the event planner, a kind woman named Sophia. She saw the distress on my face and leaned in close. "Pamela, are you all right?" "He's about to name you," she whispered urgently. "Please, Sophia," I begged, my voice shaky. "You can't let him. Not now. Not like this." She saw the tears I was fighting back and understood. With a quick nod, she hurried toward the podium. She passed a small note to Mr. Albright. He read it, his expression shifting from surprise to understanding. He looked out at the curious audience and adjusted his speech. "It seems," he said smoothly, "that our benefactor values humility above all else. So, we will save the big reveal for later. For now, let's simply enjoy this wonderful evening and the cause that brings us together." The tension in the room was palpable, a mystery left unsolved. My mother let out an annoyed sigh, clearly irritated that the spotlight had been diverted. She turned to me as I returned to my seat. "What did you mess up this time?" she asked, her voice dripping with contempt. Her question reopened every old wound. The humiliation was a physical ache. I remembered her taking credit for my first promotion, telling everyone it was because of her connections. I saw her mocking my decision to leave my stable job and start my own business, telling the whole family I couldn't hold a real job. Across the table, my younger sister Brooke gave me a small, sympathetic smile. But it was the same patronizing look she'd given me our whole lives. It never came with support, only pity. I clutched my napkin in my lap, trying to steady my breathing. Then I overheard my mother, who had already moved on, speaking to the man on her other side. "Pamela is very sweet," she said in a confidential tone, "but she just doesn't have the natural capability that Brooke possesses." Something inside me snapped. It wasn't the hot, messy anger I was used to. It was a cold, clear certainty. I excused myself and walked to the restroom, but I didn't cry. I looked at my reflection in the mirror, a 38-year-old woman, and saw strength I had forgotten. I pulled out my phone and called my mentor, Benjamin. He answered on the second ring. "Pamela? How is the event?" I told him what happened, my voice surprisingly steady. He was silent for a moment. Then he said, "You built something incredible from nothing. You don't need their approval. Just wait. The truth will reveal itself at the right time." His words were an anchor. I hung up, squared my shoulders, and walked back into the hall. I returned to the table to find my mother had moved into my seat. She was leaning toward Amelia, saying, "It's a shame, really. Pamela is between jobs right now, you know." I stood behind my chair. "Actually, Mom," I said, my voice calm but firm. "I'm not between jobs. My consulting business is doing very well." Diane looked up at me, startled for a second before she let out a light, dismissive laugh. "Oh, sweetheart," she said, patting my arm. "Your little work projects aren't a real business. Don't confuse hobbies with actual accomplishments." The people at the table didn't join her laughter. Instead, they exchanged awkward glances. I saw their expressions shift from amusement to a dawning understanding. The dynamic was changing. Just then, Mr. Albright returned to the microphone. "If I could have your attention," he announced. "We'd like to recognize all of our wonderful donors tonight. If you contributed to this year's fundraiser, please stand." I took a deep breath and stood up. A few dozen other people around the room also rose to their feet. My mother rolled her eyes dramatically. "Pamela, for heaven's sake, sit down," she said, her voice loud enough for our entire section to hear. "Those people need to have donated real money." I didn't sit. I kept my posture straight. Mr. Albright caught my eye from across the room and gave me a small, grateful nod. He knew the truth. He knew I had funded more than all the standing donors combined. My sister Brooke, still seated, looked up at me with a confused smirk. "Wait, Pamela," she asked, a mocking tone in her voice. "Did you actually donate anything significant?" Before I could answer, a distinguished older gentleman approached our table. He was Walter Jones, the chairman of the charities board. He completely ignored my mother and extended his hand directly to me. "Ms. Monroe," he said warmly, shaking my hand. "A quiet thank you for your incredible contribution. We will, of course, continue to respect your privacy." He gave me a knowing look before moving away. My mother's mouth was slightly agape. She had seen the entire interaction. A seed of doubt and sharp jealousy bloomed in her eyes. Why was the board chairman thanking me? Brooke leaned closer to me, her voice a hushed whisper. "Why is he thanking you? What did you do?" I met her gaze, allowing a small, calm smile to touch my lips. "I'll tell you about it later," I said softly. My mother abruptly stood up, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. "Excuse me," she said stiffly, and marched toward the cluster of event staff near the entrance. I watched as she cornered a young volunteer, her body language aggressive. She was clearly demanding to know the identity of the major donor. The volunteer shook her head, refusing to give any information. I saw my mother's face flush with frustration. She hated not being in control, not having access to the most important information in the room. Her irritation was turning into a desperate, burning need to know. As she stormed away from the volunteer, defeated, two women from a nearby table glanced at me and then at each other. I clearly heard one whisper to the other, "Do you think it's her? Do you think Pamela Monroe is the donor?" A subtle social shift began to ripple through the room. Guests who had previously ignored me now offered warm smiles. A few even came over to introduce themselves and compliment my dress. I was being treated with a new, unexpected respect based on the growing rumors. My mother returned to the table, her confusion now mixed with fury. The attention was flowing toward me, and it was a current she couldn't stop. She tried to reassert her dominance. In a voice meant to carry, she said, "I hope you're all not bothering Pamela. She needs to save her energy. She can barely afford her rent on that little apartment of hers." The table fell into a stunned silence. People looked from her enraged face to my calm one. Their expressions were no longer of pity for me, but of shock and distaste for her. Just then, the lights dimmed again. Mr. Albright stepped back to the podium. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, "the moment has arrived. It is time for our official donor reveal." A single spotlight clicked on, sweeping slowly across the room. My heart felt like it was going to beat right out of my chest. This was it. There was no turning back. My mother sat up perfectly straight, a smug, expectant smile plastered on her face. I realized with a jolt that she still thought there was a chance it was her, that she would be vindicated. My sister Brooke, oblivious, casually checked her reflection in the back of a polished spoon, ensuring she looked perfect for the camera. Mr. Albright's voice echoed through the silent hall. "This person's generosity has changed lives. And the person who generously funded this entire evening is Pamela Monroe." For a second, there was absolute silence. Then, applause erupted, starting slowly and building into a thunderous ovation. My mother's face drained of all color, becoming a mask of pure, uncomprehending shock. Brooke choked on her sip of wine, coughing violently as she stared at me. I stood up slowly, my legs trembling, but my head was held high. A feeling I hadn't known in years, pride, warmed me from the inside. Mr. Albright beamed at me. He waited for the applause to die down and added, "And that's not all, there's something else the room should know about her." The room quieted, eager for more. "Pamela's generosity didn't stop at tonight's event," Mr. Albright announced, his voice filled with emotion. "She is the sole funder of our entire, multi-year scholarship program for underserved youth. She has single-handedly ensured that dozens of young people will have the education they deserve." Another, even louder wave of applause swept through the room. People rose to their feet in a standing ovation. The spotlight was firmly on me. I saw my mother collapse back into her chair as if all the air had been knocked out of her. The humiliation was complete. Mr. Albright gestured toward me. "Pamela, would you please come up and share a few words with us?" I walked to the podium on unsteady legs, but my voice was clear and strong when I spoke. "Thank you," I began. "This isn't about recognition for me. It's about opportunity for others. I know what it's like to rebuild your life, to feel like you're starting from nothing." I looked out at the kind, attentive faces. I believe in helping quietly, without any fanfare. And I believe in supporting others, even when you struggle to find support yourself from those closest to you. I didn't look at my mother, but everyone else did. The room felt the weight of my unspoken words. I saw several people nod in understanding. As I finished my short speech with another thank you, I glimpsed my mother pushing her chair back and rushing toward the restrooms, one hand covering her face. The rest of the evening was a blur of handshakes and congratulations. As people began to leave, my mother found me near the entrance. Her eyes were red-rimmed and furious. "How could you?" she spat, her voice low and venomous. "How dare you humiliate me like that in front of everyone?" I looked at her, feeling a strange sense of calm. I didn't say a single word about you, Mother, I replied evenly. You managed to humiliate yourself all on your own. She switched tactics instantly, her face crumpling. After everything I've done for you. This is how you treat your own mother? The guilt trip, her oldest weapon, had no effect on me tonight. It just faded away. Before I could respond, Brooke approached us, wringing her hands. Her expression was nervous. Pamela, she said softly. We need to talk. Brooke led me a few steps away from our fuming mother. I always knew you were smarter than me, she confessed, not meeting my eyes. I was jealous. I sided with Mom all these years because it was easier. I was scared of her. It was an apology, but a selfish one. She was shaken, but not truly repentant. Then she looked at me, a calculating glint in her eye. Your consulting business must be huge. Now that you're so successful, do you think, could you help me get a job? Maybe in your company? I looked at my sister, seeing the little girl who always followed our mother's lead. I felt a pang of sadness, but no obligation. I'll consider it, I said neutrally. It was a non-promise, and we both knew it. My mother, who had been eavesdropping, stormed over, her temporary grief replaced by fresh rage. You, she screamed at Brooke, drawing stares from the remaining guests. You betraying, ungrateful little snake. After everything I've done to put you first? This is our family hierarchy. Brooke shrank back, looking terrified. The few guests still milling around watched, aghast at the public meltdown. A security guard stepped forward, placing a gentle but firm hand on my mother's arm. Ma'am, you need to lower your voice, please, he said calmly. I stood silently, refusing to be pulled into their drama. My mother shook off the guard's hand and turned her desperate eyes to me. Pamela, please, she begged, her voice cracking. Tell them this is all a big misunderstanding. Tell them I was just joking earlier. This was the final breaking point. I looked at the woman who had spent my entire life making me feel small. The words I had held inside for decades finally came out, quiet and firm. No, Mother. I'm done. I'm done letting you belittle me. I'm done seeking your approval. Tonight proved, once and for all, that I never needed it. The fight drained out of her. Her shoulders slumped, and her face seemed to age 10 years in an instant. The power she had held over me for so long slipped from her grasp and shattered on the floor. As she stood there, defeated, Mr. Walter Jones, the board chairman, approached me with a warm smile, completely ignoring her. Pamela, Walter said, on behalf of the entire board, I'd like to formally invite you to join us. We need someone with your compassion, your integrity, and your commitment to real change on our leadership board. I saw my mother's head snap up. She had been campaigning for a seat on that very board for years. The irony was a perfect, painful blow. I looked at Walter, then at my mother's stunned face. I felt no gloating, only a quiet confidence. I would be honored to accept, I said, shaking his hand. Brooke, who had been watching the exchange, sidled up to me. Her voice was a nervous whisper. Does this mean Mom isn't welcome back at this event next year? The social consequences were immediate. As the crowd thinned, my mother became the subject of hushed, scandalized whispers. Did you hear what she said to her own daughter? So cruel. People actively avoided her, giving her a wide berth. I saw her try to latch onto a group of departing guests. We're just so incredibly proud of Pamela, she announced, trying to attach herself to my success. One of the women gave her a cold look. I stepped forward gently. Thank you, Mother, I said, my voice clear. But I think everyone here understands that my achievements are my own. She flinched as if I'd struck her. Mr. Albright then approached and offered me one final honor to close the night. He led me back to the podium and presented me with the first scholarship certificate to award symbolically. I held it and looked out at the audience. This first scholarship, I announced, my voice thick with emotion, I'd like to dedicate to the memory of my father. He was the one who always told me to dream big, and to be kind. He would have been so proud to be here tonight. The room melted into a warm, sympathetic applause. I saw my mother across the room. She looked like she'd been physically punched. My father had been her husband, but this was my memory, my tribute. She had no part in it. Her control over our family story was gone forever. As I stepped outside into the cool night air, she followed me, her voice broken. "Pamela, please. Don't leave me behind." I turned to face her. The anger was gone, replaced by a profound sense of peace. "I wish you well, Mom." "Truly, I do," I said. "I forgive you for tonight, and for all the nights before. But I am done. I'm done being your punching bag." She finally broke. Sobs racked her body as she realized the door was closed, the boundary was set. She was left alone on the steps to face the consequences of a lifetime of her own actions. There was nothing more to say. I turned and walked back through the doors into the warm light of the hall. I was met with a soft round of applause from the hotel staff and the few remaining board members. Their faces held genuine respect. Walter Jones shook my hand again. "Thank you for your generosity, and for your remarkable resilience tonight, Pamela." I smiled, a real, effortless smile. "Thank you, Walter." For the first time in my life, I said, the truth of it settling deep in my soul, I finally feel free. I walked out of the hotel and into the night, not with the heat of revenge, but with the steady, warm glow of triumph. My victory was rooted in dignity, boundaries, and the quiet knowledge of my own self-worth. As I passed a small group of guests waiting for their cars, I heard one of them murmur, "That woman is incredible." It was the validation I had spent a lifetime craving from my mother, but I now realized I never really needed it from anyone at all.